Unruly Subjects is supported by listeners just like you. Join us at patreon.com/unrulysubjects. Grow Home Productions.
So I got to figure out what I'm going to say on my podcast this week. What do you think I should say?
I'm going to whisper in your ear.
Okay.
And I want you to say, okay?
Okay. I would say, come on, baby.
Yeah.
Come on, baby. Like that?
Yeah.
Okay, then what?
And then he'll say, come on, y'all. And then you'll keep saying, come on, something.
Okay, I'll say, come on, baby. Come on, y'all. Come on. Come on.
You can say, like, come on, whatever you want.
Come on, let's help each other.
Come on, let's help each other.
Come on, let's help our sister.
Come on, let's help our brother.
Oh, that was good. That was good. I like that.
Come on, people, let's get those pitchforks. Yeah, y'all know what's next. Look. This hay ain't gonna bail itself, you know what I'm saying? Man, here at Unruly Subjects, we hate to see a fresh plate of billionaire go to waste. That's how we feel. What up, y'all? Unruly Subjects is outside, but it's so hot. I'm trying to go back inside at this point, you know what I mean? Man, it's very hot, you know what I mean? Anyway, yo, welcome to Unruly Subjects. Man, much love to all of y'all. Thank you for sharing the show. And big shout out to our Patreon supporters. Man, y'all are really keeping our show moving, you know what I'm saying? And listen, if you are getting something out of this show, if you learned something from these episodes, and you want us to stay free and accountable only to you, then we want you to go on over to unrulysubjectspodcast.com and join. You know what I mean? You can join at any tier you want. You might be feeling irresponsible and generous. You know what I mean? You want to spend a lot of money on Unruly Subjects. We encourage that. We're gonna put it to good use. I promise you. Or you might be like, you know what? I just want to join the free tier right now and be a part of the community. And we encourage that too. You know what I'm saying? It's all welcome, but we do want to keep the show going, and we really appreciate your help on that. Before we get into today's main conversation, I want to let you know that you got to stay tuned because there's a treat coming up at the end of the episode. Some of you know that I worked with an incredible journalist named John Bewin on a podcast called Seen on Radio, including a season called Seeing White, which is a history of racial ideas and whiteness. And it's one of the most influential pieces of work I've ever been a part of. Millions of downloads. It's been used in classrooms, study groups, political education spaces. We actually have, done live versions, different places. And John and I also worked together on another season about the history of American democracy. And now we have a new season of Seen on Radio coming out. The trailer is dropping soon. And toward the end of today's show, I'm going to give you a little preview of what's coming. So stay with us for that. Today's conversation is about informed consent, pregnancy, drug testing, hospitals, and the family policing system. And I want to get right into it because this is one of those issues where the more you learn, you're just like, man, I did not know this was going on like this. And so you're going to hear about a form of surveillance and punishment that's been happening to parents and newborns in medical settings. But you're also going to hear about a coalition that's been organizing against it. We want to take you into areas of struggle that don't get talked about enough, but we don't want to just leave you with another tragic story about how bad everything is. We want to show you where people are fighting, where people are organizing and making big moves, scoring victories, and building enough power that institutions have to respond. You know what I mean? We don't want them to ignore us. They can't ignore us. All right. So a while back, we had April Lee on the show to talk about the child welfare system, or as we call it, the family policing system. And one of the things we talked about in that episode is how so many of the things that are supposedly done in the name of protecting children actually end up harming children and harming parents and destabilizing families. And that's the contradiction at the center of this whole system, right? They say they're keeping people safe, but then the intervention is separation, surveillance, threats, involving the courts in our lives, all that stuff, right? So if we're serious about safety, we really have to ask, safe for who and safe from what? And so today's conversation is going to move in that same direction. So in the interview, they're going to break down this practice called test and report. And the work of the Informed Consent Coalition is fighting against that. And they're going to talk about why this struggle isn't just about one hospital policy, but it's really about reproductive justice broadly and racial justice and, all these other fights. And they get into how people have organized, how the movement has grown, and what you can actually do to plug in. I learned a ton from listening to these two powerful advocates, and I can't wait for y'all to hear it. So here it is. All right. Unruly subjects. Yes. You know what I mean? We outside and we have some amazing guests. So today, I want to tell you a story about how medical care, racism, drug war logic, and family policing converge at one of the most vulnerable moments in a person's life, right? Which is pregnancy, birth, the days after a child is born, or even if someone is parenting. And it involves, something that we're fighting for, which is basically informed consent. Now, you might hear the term informed consent and think of it as some kind of narrow medical issue, like medical ethics or something. But there's a coalition who's been fighting, and they really are like, this opens up into a whole other political issue that we really need to know about. So I'm really excited that today on the show, we got experts. We got people who have been in the field on this and really just, are going to teach us so much. First, we have Desseray Wright. You know what I'm saying? Welcome, Desseray.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for having me here. Yeah, Desseray from the big Bronx, not the little,
Yes,
Okay.
the big Bronx. You already know. Desseray is a family defense policy advocate at the Bronx Defenders, where she works to challenge and transform the family regulation system. She was born and raised in the Bronx, organized and advocated with all kinds of different groups, including a Movement for Family Power, National Council for Incarcerated and Formerly Incarcerated Women and Girls. Her advocacy, has included work on this informed consent bill, but also things like family Miranda rights, all kinds of stuff. And it's grounded in both organizing and her own experience as a parent directly impacted by the regulation system. So we're happy to have you here. And we also have with us in the building, Dr. Ukoha, a board-certified OBGYN and a maternal fetal medicine specialist at Mount Sinai. And she's also really deep in this work. I mean, she's looking at the policy. She understands what it means from the standpoint of a doctor. So welcome to the show. We're really happy to have your expertise.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
Now, we want to really get into, these campaigns about informed consent and what everybody needs to know about this, because I know our Unruly Subjects listeners are really interested. We also believe here that, like, people who are organizing, sometimes when we hear all the work you're doing, it makes people feel like, oh my God, these people they're different than me because they know all this stuff, they've been through that. And, on one level, facts, you know what I'm saying? We got some real special folks here, but also y'all are people who are struggling through regular things in life as well. So hopefully you can somewhere in the work, you can also find a little bit of joy. So Desseray, you got any plans this weekend? I mean, what's going on?
Yeah, so this weekend I'm going to DC to do the Mother's Day March down in DC. And I'm just, I'm just going to bring my little self and my little vibe.
Oh, yeah, I like that. The Mother's Day. Yeah, Mother's Day is coming up. You know what I'm saying? That's big. I got my whole weekend is mapped out. I'm still figuring it out to take care of my wife and all the mothers in my life. And look at you marching on Mother's Day. You know what I mean? I mean, it's like, let me just say, I don't know what time the march is over, but if it's over early enough for you to get a spa day in real quick, we support that here. You know what
I'm hoping, but
yeah.
Work don't never stop.
That's cool. I respect that. Even on Mother's Day, and that's actually in the tradition of Mother's Day. We should do a whole other subject on that. How Mother's Day itself is a radical holiday. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So, Arinma, what do you got? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
What's happening?
I unfortunately can't make it out to DC for the Black Mothers March. I would have been there otherwise, but hopefully, the rest of the week is low key. We get some rest, some recovery in, a little hoops in, just taking it easy, eating good food.
All right. What's good food for you, by the way?
Good food. Any combination of like carb and meat. I'm
And he's like, any kind I mean, when I'm like, yo, Caribbean food,
pick
like you
the
like,
mix. I like
it's
Caribbean,
Italian, yeah.
Thai. I'm versatile. I'm versatile. Chinese, Asian. I just tried a new spot, Marquette. It's like
Mm.
a Caribbean fusion, black owned spot. I
Oh
was
no, you said it. I love that
exactly
Marquette. Oh man,
Marquette.
let me write
Yeah.
that down.
If you go there, drop my name. Maybe they'll throw a little something.
Yeah, yeah, I'll draw your
Yeah.
name, and this way they know you were the plug, and then at the same time, maybe we can get a hookup. I can bring my wife and get some points. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
So,
Marquette. It was a cool vibe. It was a good spot.
yeah, listen, revolutionaries have to eat. That's the thing. We still got to eat so we can keep going. All right, y'all. Well, yo, getting to it. All right, listen, on this whole issue of informed consent, right? Let's dig into what's actually going on. I really want to break it down. So could you explain in plain language what's happening in hospitals or clinical settings, right? Who's being tested? What kind of tests, right? What does it mean for them to not be consensual? And, what is the information that patients, in these situations may not know?
So the practice that we're talking about is called test and report, where people have drug tests done on them at some point during prenatal care, their birthing, hospitalization, or even postpartum on their newborns. And if these test results are positive, that is then subsequently reported to the family policing system. And that idea that these tests are non-consensual, that's often the case, in that people don't know these tests are happening to them. They don't know that they're happening to their newborn. No one's talking to them about the indications of the test or the implications. There's no conversation surrounding that. And then are then reported to the family policing system and have to deal with all the negative consequences from that without having an understanding of why it even happened to them.
Now, when you say people don't know, are you saying like they might draw somebody's blood and it's like you don't even know what test they run it, but they actually ran a drug test. So you literally don't know. You just know they took your blood, but you don't know what test they run it. And they're like that? Or they're running it on your urine?
It's typically urine testing that's happening, right? You think about like labor and delivery. If you come into an appointment and people are saying like, oh, we just need a quick urine sample. And we're just thinking you're getting your routine prenatal care or just delivery care. Lots of things are happening, as you can imagine, when someone is in labor, right? And just taking a urine sample, sometimes from a Foley catheter that's inserted. So you're not even being asked to pee into a cup, right? It's just someone's taking a sample from urine that's coming out of you through a catheter, and then that's being sent for test.
And those Foley catheters are already kind of a traumatic thing by themselves, but I guess sometimes necessary. But yes, okay, no, this is helpful. So yeah, you don't know that this is happening, and then this stuff is being passed on. Desseray, anything you want to say about that before I dig in a little deeper?
Yeah. So a lot of parents like me, when you're in labor, that's when you come in. They take all your urine right then and there. So I was tested as soon as I came in, and they took the first urine. My baby was tested after he was born, and I realized that when I pulled his pamper back, and they had like a little plastic bag around his scrotum area, and I'm like, well, what is that? Right? And they had to collect urine from him, but they still never told me what they were doing, right? They were just like collecting urine from us. And I found out at the end, right, when a social worker was coming to my room to tell me that me and my son was tested positive for a drug. And so I wasn't leaving the hospital with my baby. I had to wait to get permission from ACS, and ACS had to come and see me before I can even leave the hospital with my baby. So I left the hospital first, and then I had to call ACS every day to get my baby, and hopefully pray that they would release my baby to me. Because once ACS is involved, actually your child is not in your care anymore. It's in custody of the state. And so now you have to wait for them to give you permission, because now the child belongs to them.
Thank you for sharing this, because I know that every time you share this, you have to remember it, which it's not pleasant. But I'm glad you did, because I wanted to really illustrate what is at stake for people, what can happen when these tests are passed on. So could you slow down a little bit and just explain a little bit about how you felt? Like, here you are, not knowing that they're going to do this, and then they're telling you what?
Right. That's like the most devastating thing to especially a mom who might be going through postpartum depression, who might be going through so many things that's going on with her body alone. And now she has to find out that her baby might not be coming back home with her because she has to deal with this punitive system that is only coming in to tell her what to do. You know what I mean? Not how they're going to support her, how they're going to, hold her hand or get her help or whatever it is, right? But how they're going to punish her. You're just like mind boggled, right? Not to mention that your body produces the milk for your baby. And now that your baby is not there, your body's not producing like it's supposed to because you're so worried, you're so stressed out. Right. And so a mom who's going through postpartum depression, who's going through all of these things, and now she has to turn around and fight for her kid is very devastating. It can deter you. It can really deter you. Even if you wanted to get clean and sober for some reason, it's like I'm so focused on trying to get my baby back. And then some women are running right back to the problem because they don't have the help. And my case was back in the 90s. And here we are in 2026, and we're still doing the same thing to parents. We're penalizing them for using a drug that our counterparts are using every day. I know for me, when it first happened to me, I was like, I'm not going back to the hospital, right? We often don't want to go back to those hospitals. We're looking for other hospitals to have our babies in. You have people driving way out to give birth, right? Or looking for a doula, right? Or midwife. We're just scared to go to the hospitals now. We're scared to even tell doctors, what is going on with us. And so the doctors are getting to us late, right? And so we're putting mothers and babies more at jeopardy by doing this, testing them and reporting them versus supporting them.
Thank you. Again, thank you for sharing this. And that's what I want to get into, because I think people have to understand the scale. This is happening, right, to a lot of folks, and it's disproportionately Black and brown mothers. Most people assume if a hospital tests you or your newborn for drugs, there must be a medical reason, and also that you must have consented to this in some meaningful way. But I think your coalition is saying that, especially for, many folks in perinatal phase in New York, especially Black and brown folks, that's not what's happening, and that there's something really wrong with that view, including how it skews our understanding of what it really means to keep both child and parents and families safe. So could you just give us the basic explanation of what's wrong with that? And then we'll move into what's actually happening in these institutions.
Yeah, I think those assumptions are ones that we want to make when we're getting medical care, because we want to feel safe and we want to trust our providers. But there's a lot of bias and racism, stigma, that's all at play, especially for individuals who are Black, who are marginalized, poor, right? So this notion that medical providers are unbiased and objective, and that the profession of medicine in and of itself is not the underlyings of racism are not seen throughout that in a day-to-day way, that ahistorical view can be really harmful, because there is harm that's happening, and that's happening especially during pregnancy, postpartum, and when Black, Latinx, Indigenous, poor individuals present for care, they are at risk of being entered into the family policing system, criminal legal system, and all those negative implications downstream. I do want to highlight, we're based in New York, and this is New York specific, this legislation, but this is an issue that's happening all over the country.
Absolutely. No, I really appreciate that. I mean, that means a lot to hear that from your perspective as a doctor, because, not every doctor is politically engaged. So I know there's probably even doctors themselves who just see themselves as I just want to provide care, but the medical work is not separate from these other political issues, and it really impacts people. And speaking of that, Desseray, I want you to answer the question. I'm also interested in what was your introduction to this work?
Sure. Well, a little bit about me. I was incarcerated for 10 years in the federal prison. I lost my daughter to gun violence while I was incarcerated. But before all of that, I was entangled into the family policing system at a younger age. And so I've seen both sides of the offenses. I've seen how the criminal justice system and the family policing system are both the same. One is just for adults and one is for children. And I was ashamed to even tell anybody that I had an ACS case was even more like harmful for me, because instead of letting it out, I was like holding everything in, how I felt about ACS, how it made me feel and everything. But when I came home and I met other parents that was entangled into the system, I'm like, oh, this is really a problem. It wasn't the fact that I was a bad parent. I just needed a little bit more support. And that was it. And so I realized that this is just a problem and that they only attack the Black and brown communities. So that's how I got involved in this work.
Absolutely. No, I mean, when you say that, it just makes me think about how, this sort of like ideas and stigma are applied to certain communities, how like this whole issue of understanding how safety is provided and how we keep, a child safe, how we keep a parent safe. It's all wrapped in these other stereotypes and issues people have. And, I just got to say, I mean, look, like if the issue is like, and, using any substance automatically makes you a bad parent. I mean, we know that there are real concerns we have with people who are abusing substances and have problems, but I could just say like, hanging out with families who, are like have a fair amount of money and might not be Black people. It's like, sometimes there's a lot of substances being used, but you don't see the same thing. You know what I mean? Especially if we're going to include alcohol as one of those substances. It's like, oh man, it's a lot going on, but everything else. But somehow in those situations, we don't see the same set of interventions being applied. Any of you want to expound on that component a little bit?
I think they mask it well, right? They're white, they're in suburban areas, they're living life. And so I think like the system just thinks, oh, they can take care of their children. Whereas people in my community, we come outside, we outside, right? Right? We come outside with our chancletas on, we go to the store.
Right.
We living in poverty, right? And we show it. We show it is no way to mask poverty. There's no way to mask that we're broke. There's no way to mask that we messed up right out here. Whereas they have money, they can dress nice, and you don't think they're using drugs, but they're using all the drugs we're using.
Right. Dr. Ukoha?
Yeah. I mean, exactly what Desseray said. There's so much stigma behind it, systemic racism at play, right? This moral construction of poverty that we think about when we think about, people who don't have means and why that's so. That leads to us associating drug use differently, depending on someone's color, their socioeconomic status, despite the data that we have that there's no evidence that people who use drugs are at higher risk of harming, neglecting, mistreating their children. There's no data that supports that. And then these assumptions are impacting Black and brown communities, poor communities at higher rates than their white counterparts. We have data that shows drug use is the same between races, right? So just because you color your skin, there's no increased risk of drug use, and that drug use and parenting can go hand in hand and be fine.
I really appreciate what you're sharing, and I think you're right, both of you, and what you say. And what it makes me feel is like one of the biggest hurdles is for people to figure out, do you actually want to care for people, help people rehabilitate, make sure people are safe, or are we actually just about judging people according to our own moral compass? Because we're talking about the way that the state does this and the way that this is worked into these laws. But I also feel like some of these ideas are present in our own communities. And I get it, because if you grew up in this era where you're receiving all this media that's basically blaming individuals, and a lot of times blaming Black women, who are, in my opinion, the heroes of our community. You know what I mean? It's like, then you grow up and you get this orientation where it's like, I think people's sense of wanting to punish people is underneath their understanding about the solution. And I'm like, we got to be clear about what helps people. And if you're serious about what helps people, then the only thing you should be caring about is, what does the research say about what helps people and what that means about keeping families together. That's what you care about. All the rest of it is not you trying to do something else.
Mm-hmm.
Dr. Ukoha, could you talk about, like, we're targeted disproportionately, but the research doesn't show that we even are, drug users or substance abusers disproportionately. So what about that part?
I mean, that's true. There's data from as early as the 1990s looking at substance use out in Florida. There was a big study that looks at that in pregnancy, showing similar rates of drug use, but that Black mothers were 10 times as likely to be reported.
10 times?
For that, 10 times. More recent data, we have data coming out of Pennsylvania, again, looking at the same things, right? This is specifically looking at the likelihood of being tested and your likelihood of being positive. And I think the New York Times even highlighted this study from 2023, showing that Black individuals coming in labor and delivery are more likely to be tested, although they are less likely to test positive, regardless of any history of substance use or not. So those disparities are continuing till this day. It was just like Desseray said, her case was back then, and we're still having the same arguments, trying to change mindsets and change the narrative till this day.
Unruly Subjects is supported by listeners just like you. Join us at patreon.com/unrulysubjects. Unruly Subjects. Yo, I want to tell y'all about a podcast I love called The Longest Shortest Time. The show is hosted by Hillary Frank, and she tells really surprising stories about parenthood and reproductive health. I mean, look, she's interviewing all kinds of parents, so y'all got to hear it. I mean, there's one episode where it's like a mom who's a boxer. There's a military mom episode, a trans dad. And there's a mom who went through 15 rounds of IVF, which going through even one round is a lot if you've been through that journey. And if you're new to this show, a great place to start is an episode called Managing Your Perimenopausal Rage, about a menopause specialist who didn't even realize that all the symptoms and things she was going through was because she was in perimenopause. So that's definitely a good place to start. And in this show, Hillary talks to plenty of non-parents too. So I think no matter where you are in relation to this, you're going to find it really, really fascinating. Find The Longest Shortest Time wherever you get podcasts, or you can go to longestshortesttime.com. Now, your coalition has situated this test and report practice within the larger maternal mortality crisis, which we know is national, but also, hits also home really in New York, noting that Black women in New York die at more than 4 times the rate of white women. So we are often talking about these issues like in relation to like access and the bias of doctors and all this. But how does this form of surveillance fit into this where, literally your hospital is also a place of danger?
Mm-hmm.
I was talking to some people in Minneapolis about ICE and how like healthcare workers, and they were saying how because of ICE, all these people, mothers who have concerns don't even want to come in. And it's just like, okay, so you got ICE, people don't want to come in. You got the system is going to surveil people. And it's like all these forces that are stopping people. And like you said, systemic going on for decades. When you see some of these pundits and people out here that want to act like structural racism, structural oppression, structural misogyny, and, all these things are not real. Like we somehow dealt with those at some point and it's over. It's like, this is what we're talking about, folks. It's baked in. Dr. Ukoha, if you could talk about what actually helps people heal when they are actually experiencing some kind of issue with a substance, and what is the actual proper role of testing? Is like, what role does testing play in a more holistic and actually healing focused process?
Yeah, that's a great question. And right, the goal of any drug screening or testing should be to connect people with resources, with support, with treatment, whether that's prenatal care, substance use treatment, wraparound services. And so the idea that this should be done in a non-consensual way, in a hidden way where people aren't informed about what's going on, is the complete antithesis of helping them get the care and support they need and meeting them where they're at. So when we think about like harm reduction approaches and how do we make sure, even if people are not ready to stop using, that they can still engage in care and be safe and be healthy, that's what substance use treatment looks like. And drug tests are rarely, if ever, needed to guide that treatment. That treatment's based on trust, on transparency, on, like I said, meeting people where they're at, on having resources available to them when they're ready to accept that, and having them, be able to guide that care and navigating a really complex issue and walking side by side with that person as they go through. It's based on relationships and community building and seeing what's accessible. And so drug tests are not needed to do that, to care for people, to treat substance use, right? And so I always emphasize that the importance of the care that we're doing, and like Desseray says, is to keep people engaged in care, make sure that that care is accessible regardless of, where you're coming from, what substance you might be using, making sure you feel safe in that hospital and that care setting so that you continue to engage.
Now, how much of hospitals using this is about them essentially understanding what the law requires versus something else, like they're, choosing these more kind of surveillance punitive practices because they want to avoid liability and things of this nature? Could we say a little bit about that and how that factors into the strategy of the Informed Consent Coalition?
I think the biggest thing is that New York law does not require any drug testing of any potential substance exposed infants or newborns, or if there's risk, right? The requirements that are based off mandatory reporting laws and CAPTA requirements differ from state to state, but most places, a vast majority, do not require either drug testing, nor do they require that be reported to family policing system.
Even in the courts, like, they can't remove based on just drug usage, right? Like, they have to add other things onto that to remove based on drug usage.
So when folks out there acting like they got to do this and, oh, I'm sorry, but we don't have a choice, that's a lie. That ain't, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah. I think it's a combination of hospitals trying to protect themselves and their financial viability, right? Their economics, and hospital policies can, very often exceed what's required by the law. And they're not thinking about the whole picture, the whole person, and the implications of that drug test, especially when we know that there's data about the harms of removal, both from a newborn and a maternal standpoint.
It's not a good thing that they're just arbitrarily doing this and that they don't have to. But what's good about it is that means that if we can create enough pressure and do some, and really kind of like get this bill passed and put some pressure on them, they can change this, because it ain't like, the obstacles to change it doesn't sound like it's really fully a legal one. Speaking of which, y'all been on the march about this. Talk about how you've organized against this. What have been some moments that have shown you that there's momentum, that have encouraged you to keep you in this fight? And eventually we want to get to what people can do, how they can plug in. So Desseray, you want to give us a little bit of that?
Right. That's a good question, because I remember when I first came into this fight, it was only like 5 people on the steps, right, screaming, FACS. And we was doing our best. And we wrote the first bill, the SCR bill that got passed, right? And then the Anti-Harassment and Reporting Act bill. And then that just passed this year. But now what we're seeing is that, one, doctors are jumping on board, right? Hospitals are even starting to use the language that we use. ACS is starting to, like, quote unquote, change some of their practice, but they're not. And not only that, we see legislators, right? Today, legislators are writing bills against the family policing system. So that is the movement. And that is like, oh, wow, we're being heard. Where versus there was no bills for the family policing system. The first bill was the SCR bill. Right now, today, we have anti-harassment, SCR. We have, MHDCA now. That's the informed consent bill. Like, it didn't pass, but we have so many bills coming into place for the family policing system that we didn't have, that nobody was even looking at this system.
No, I love that. And I just want to, all that momentum and actually getting bills passed, getting more bills into circulation, connecting people on it, bringing different kinds of folks in. I mean, I think about that, and it makes me think about the first thing you said, which is when you first started this, it was kind of lonely. And I think a lot of people need to hear that, because we're under rough times now and people lose morale because they're like, oh, it feels like we're up against so much. But y'all heard it. Y'all heard it from Desseray. She said it was just a few of us. You know what I'm saying? But now they can't ignore the roar. You know what I mean? Dr. Ukoha, what have you seen in this fight that is, inspiring, encouraging, and or even some things that we need to focus on and sharpen?
Yeah, like Desseray said, it's the momentum behind it. Each year we go out to Lobby Day, there's more and more people that show up. We're talking to more and more legislators. You can really see that people are starting to, we're providing a counter narrative, and people are starting to hear us about how family policing, this is a political injustice, it's a racial injustice, a reproductive injustice, and we're connecting the lines for people, right? And people are starting to see the importance of this. Desseray's been doing this, working in this for longer than I've been in New York, right? And so she can speak to the historical knowledge of where we're coming from and where we're going. But I think it's baby steps. And it's like she said, the bill didn't pass this past year, but we're at it again. We're trying to get things across the finish line. And even in the absence of the bill passing, we see hospitals changing. Right? So they're hearing this conversation. And like I said, they're adapting our language. They're changing their policies. So like, even if we don't get that like big success each year, the conversation's changing, the narrative that we're pushing out, people are hearing impacted parents and feeling what they're saying and thinking about this issue differently.
I know, I love that's so clear, so motivating. And by the way, let me ask you this question, because I want to get into what you all want to recommend people to do to plug in. But I'm just curious, Desseray, when you're talking to people, and maybe who aren't familiar with this issue, and you're motivating them to try to get them to understand, could you give me an example of what that conversation looks like?
It's funny you said that, because I kind of get everybody with the fact that our children are in prison, right? Our children are honestly in prison. When you go to the agency to visit with your child or your children, you are behind a closed door. There is a police officer outside, whether it's a security guard, police officer, it does not matter. They can call the police and get the police there. You can't move. It's in a little room. It's just like the adults, right? You have them locked up. The kids can't just go to the refrigerator and go eat, right? They have to open, they pack them up, lug them from house to house, just like an inmate is lugged from prison to prison, right? So once I start letting people understand that, and the fact that this system is operated on money alone, right? It's all about who they could snatch, what babies they could take, what babies they could put in the system, and then how much money they could keep getting off these babies' heads. Because it's not about if the child is in imminent danger. We can prove that this child is in any imminent danger. It's just about the system trying to police the mom, the dad, whoever it is, and take this baby out of this home and think that we can't raise our kids. But it's not about we can't raise our kids. It's about how much money they could get off of our kids.
No, I love that you said that. And I appreciate you taking the time, because one thing I want people to understand is, like, when you're doing real organizing, you have to have those kind of conversations. And what I loved about what you did was you broke it down to, like, look, everybody, I'm going to say everybody, but a lot of us have that experience of knowing somebody who's, either your child or a family child is in foster care. And then you're like, yeah, that's a prison. So people can relate to that because they understand. It's like, wait a minute, they're basically in prison now. Now we got to ask, how did they get there? What is the system underneath this? And you're making it relatable to people. So thank you for giving us that tutorial on how you do that. And then now you can attack the other issues and say, what is this really about? It's about the money. It's not about safety. I love it. I love that in terms of it. So either one of you can answer this, but for someone who's listening and they're like, I'm okay. I'm learning a lot. I want to plug in. How can they plug in? Where should they go? What should they do?
Oh, they could definitely plug in with the Bronx Defenders. Has a lot of information about the movement plan. JMAC for Families have a lot of information on what is going on. We, the Informed Consent Coalition, we have a website as well.
That's right. And an Instagram too, I think. And we'll put all those links in the show notes and plug everybody in. But you'd want to do that because I see that the Informed Consent Coalition also every now and then has like live streams where you'll hear from people. So that's a good place to plug in if you're already there.
Yep. The website has a lot of resources, a lot of information in terms of just like knowing more about, as we unveil what family policing is, what that looks like, who's impacted, just getting more into the history of that. Movement for Family Power has a ton of good information, resources. And then everyone's always welcome to join us on our lobby days. We do letters to legislators, assembly peoples. We have social media campaigns, sign-ons, especially for healthcare workers and social workers. We have things that you can sign on to make sure that at least your name, your organization is in support of this. So it's a movement. It's a growing movement.
We might need to plan an information raising food night at Marquette. You know what I'm saying? That's what I'm talking about. You know what I'm saying? If you can use the power of food, the meal, we can break bread together and learn some stuff. You know what I mean? And get charged up.
We gonna have them sponsor us because we're now name dropping. This is free advertising.
Yeah, come on.
Right.
Come on, Marquette. You know what I mean? You got to join the movement now, man. You know what I mean? Listen, Dr. Erinma, Ukoha, and Desseray, y'all have really, y'all have just, given us so much information. We appreciate you. We want to sustain you in this struggle, and you're always welcome back on Unruly Subjects. You know what I'm saying?
Thank you.
So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for having us. Thank you for highlighting this topic. It's important. Just happy to be here.
Absolutely. All right, y'all. That was Desseray Wright and Dr. Erinma Ukoha from the Informed Consent Coalition. Man, just really educational, really inspiring. And now, as promised, I want to give y'all a special treat. I want to give you a preview of the new season of Seen on Radio, which is called The News. And it's about the news. That's right. This is a new 8-part limited audio series by John Biewen and myself and an incredible team. And we have been working on this for years, and we wanted to talk about the ways that news is linked to everything else we're going through. I'll say that I think a lot of people have thoughts on this topic, and I promise you that what you hear in this show is probably going to challenge some of that. But I don't even want to say too much. I just want to play the trailer. So here it is. The news.
To me, Fox News they don't tell the whole story.
I'm not particularly interested in MSNBC.
And that's where I'd get irritated and not want to listen to it.
Ginger Eye.
Hey, John.
Together again. And this one's going to hit kind of close to home, isn't it?
Yeah, man. I can't believe we're about to do a whole season coming after our job.
If we want to be, Americans are inundated with news from countless sources, but we're not very happy about it.
Definitely not. Most people in the U.S. say they don't trust the news media, and that's not the only crisis journalism is dealing with right now.
The news business at the local level has all but collapsed, with dire consequences for communities.
Because I'm not going to vote if I can't get the information.
And the fractures in our media and our politics leave lots of us open to bad information.
On core questions, millions of Americans don't know what's true or believe things that are not true.
We don't have technology to store the energy from wind and solar. So if you make yourself reliant on
you can't separate the state of our news media from the other profound crises we keep on failing to solve.
From the Keenan Institute for Ethics at Duke University, I'm John Biewen.
And I'm Chenjerai Kumanyika.
Introducing Seen on Radio, The News. In our 8th season, we're going to dig deep, as usual.
We're going to ask, how did the news get this way? And what's really wrong with it? Is it what we think it is?
When we look at the American media system, it's exceptional in a number of ways and not exceptional in a positive way.
I think we can all agree that the status quo is fundamentally broken.
From Seen on Radio, The News, coming May 27th. Find us on YouTube and wherever you get your podcasts.
All right, y'all. That was the trailer for the new season of Seen on Radio, The News. I want you to go over to that feed right now and subscribe because you want to be the first to hear when it drops, and I can't wait for you to dig in. So, yeah, go do that. And that is this week's show. Unruly Subjects is produced in partnership with Rohome Productions. Boy, I'm proud of Rohome. Yeah. Alex Lewis is Rohome's creative director. John Myers is Rohome's executive producer. Thanks to Danya Abdel Hamid, Nikolai Kovac, and Alwyn Sao. And big thanks to Natalie Parrott for her help editing this week's main interview. We appreciate you, Natalie. Shout out to my gorgeous wife, Sadaka, to my daughter, Yola. Shout out to my assistant, Carissa. Big major thanks to our special guest this week, Desseray Wright and Dr. Erinma Ukoha. We really appreciate your insights. And also, thanks to Rebecca Griffin for making that connection. And speaking of guests, did you hear our episode from last week with Alec Karakatsanis about the California victory against cash bail and propaganda? Oh man, y'all gotta go listen to that. Our theme music was composed by Axel Kakutier. Alex Tatusian made our tile art. Make sure you subscribe to Unruly Subjects wherever you get your podcasts. And Unruly Subjects is now on YouTube, y'all. You know what I mean? Go check it out on YouTube. Listen to the whole episode again on YouTube and then share the link. If you have something to tell me, there's a new way to get in touch with us. You can now send us a message directly through the podcast app you're listening to right now. At the top of the show notes, there's a link that says text the Unruly Hotline. Click that and you can send us a text or even a voice memo. We might even give you a shout out on the air, so definitely check in there. And by the way, why do you listen to Unruly Subjects? We want to know. We want to know more about you, why you listen, what's working for you, etc. So we have put together a brief survey. The link is in our show notes. It's only going to take you less than a minute and it'll really help us. So please fill that out. And that is what we got this week. Peace. We'll be back next week with another banger. Rohome Productions. Hey, Unruly Subjects, it's Chinjirai, and I need your help to keep the show going strong. If you love what we do here, consider supporting us by joining our Patreon community. It's the best way to back the show, and you get some incredible benefits in return. Membership starts at just $5 a month. I mean, there's nothing that cheap, at least in New York. And you immediately get ad-free episodes and exclusive premium episodes. That includes interview outtakes and other extras you ain't gonna hear anywhere else. But that's not all. You can access the Unruly chat and polls. When we have a live event, you're gonna get the pre-sale tickets and the merch. Oh my God, the merch. You know the merch is gonna be fly. And you receive invitations to our Q&A live streams and, my favorite, our annual exclusive hangout with me, the producers, and a special guest. So yo, come on people, join the Unruly Mob. Visit patreon.com/unrulysubjects. And thank you for making this show possible.